She said he's just a friend, while his shirt hung behind her in the video call. At first I thought my brain was playing tricks on me because the connection had been glitchy all night. Her camera froze for a second on her face mid-laugh, and in that frozen frame just over her shoulder I saw it, a navy button-up shirt I'd never seen before hanging off the back of her bedroom chair. When the video caught up, she shifted, her hair swishing forward, but there it still was, sleeves dangling, collar gaping open like a mouth. I could hear my own breath in my headphones, too loud, too shallow. My cursor hovered over the edge of the screen like if I moved it, the shirt might disappear back into whatever reality my gut had just fallen into. "Babe, you still there?" she asked, tilting her head, the sound crackling through my AirPods. I swallowed, my tongue suddenly dry as cardboard. "Yeah," I said, then immediately coughed because my voice came out weird. I forced my eyes away from the shirt and back to her face. Whose shirt is that?" I tried to make it sound like a joke, like I was pointing out a random detail in the background, but I could feel my pulse hammering in my neck. She followed my gaze, clocked the shirt, and laughed, too quickly, too high. "Oh my God, you're not serious," she said, reaching back to flick the fabric. It's just Daniel's. He left it here after work drinks. He's just a friend, relax." The word just hit harder than friend. I watched her fingers smooth the shoulder of the shirt for half a second longer than necessary before she dropped her hand, eyeing me through the screen. "You're so jealous lately," she added, half teasing, half warning. My stomach turned. We'd been together for almost 4 years when that call happened. Long enough that I knew the layout of her tiny studio apartment 300 kilometers away, as well as I knew my own flat. Long enough that I could tell how her day had gone by the way she said, "Hey," when she answered the phone. Before she moved cities for work, we used to joke that we'd never survive long distance because we were both too clingy. But when she got the offer, her dream job at a not-for-profit in Melbourne after we'd spent years slowly suffocating in Sydney office parks, I was the one who said, "We'll make it work." I meant it. Or at least I thought I did back before "we'll make it work" turned into buffering screens, delayed texts, and a navy shirt that didn't belong to me. I'm 30M, she's 28F, let's call her Emily, because I'm not ready to see her real name written out next to all of this. We met in the most boring way possible, through work. We were both analysts at a mid-sized company that loved buzzwords and catered sushi. She was in marketing analytics, I was in product data. We ended up on the same cross-functional team for a project that was supposed to revolutionize customer engagement, and instead just made 3 slightly different versions of the same dashboard. What I remember most from those early weeks isn't the work, though. It's how she'd sit in meetings with her legs crossed under the chair, doodling in the margins of her notebook, then suddenly drop some ridiculously insightful comment that made the managers blink. Or how she'd always bring an extra banana to the 11 a.m. stand-up because she said, "Someone always forgets breakfast," and somehow that someone was always me. The first time we talked one-on-one, we were both waiting for the lift after one of those meetings that should have been an email. I made some sarcastic comment about our boss's latest obsession with synergy, and she snorted so hard she choked on her coffee. When she'd stopped coughing, she looked at me and said, "I'm glad someone else here has a functioning bullshit detector." I grinned. "I thought yours was broken. You stay way quieter than I expected." She shrugged, twisting her mug between her hands. "I'm bidding my time. It's much more satisfying to drop one good point than 20 average ones." Then, as the lift doors opened, she added, "You coming to pub trivia on Thursday? We need someone who knows old movies and data-why things." I didn't normally go to pub trivia. I didn't normally go to anything that involved yelling answers across sticky tables. But I showed up that Thursday, and the next, and the next. We started going for just one drink after work that would turn into 3 in shared chips, and talking about everything from our worst high school teachers to the weird grief of deleting a group chat after a breakup. She had this way of making even mundane stories sound like plot points in a show you didn't want to stop watching. Her parents' divorce became a dark comedy. Her year backpacking through Europe was somehow both a cautionary tale and a highlight reel. She told me about her older brother who died when she was 19, her voice going quiet in a way it never did for anything else, and I told her about my dad leaving when I was 12, the half-empty house he'd left behind. We were friends for 6 months before anything happened. Real friends, like texting each other memes at 2 a.m. and calling when one of us had a bad day. People at work made jokes. "Just hook up already. How's your work wife?" We brushed it off because it felt nice to have someone who was just a friend for once without the pressure. It changed on a Tuesday when we stayed late, trying to fix a bug before a demo. The office emptied around us, lights flicking off in sections as people went home. At some point, we gave up and ordered pizza, eating it cold by the glow of our monitors. "At least if this crashes during the demo, it'll be a spectacular fire," she said, leaning back in her chair. "Go out with a bang." "If it crashes, I'm quitting and becoming a barista," I said. "You can come and do latte art while I judge people for ordering decaf." She laughed, then looked at me for a second too long. The air between us shifted. You know that feeling when the song changes in a bar and suddenly everyone's a bit louder? It was like that, but silent. I like spending time with you, she said, abruptly serious. I tried to make a joke, couldn't. I like spending time with you too, I said instead. She bit her lip, then stood up, walked around the desk and kissed me. Just like that. No dramatic speech, no lead-in. Her mouth was warm and tasted like tomato sauce and cheap red wine from the office stash, and it felt like something in my chest that had been tightly wounded for months finally exhaled. We kept it quiet at work for a while, though I'm 90% sure everyone knew by the end of the first week. We'd come in together by coincidence, have lunch at the same time every day, leave at the same time looking disheveled and smug. Eventually we stopped pretending and just were. Dating Emily was like suddenly discovering your house had a balcony you never knew about. My world didn't fundamentally change, but it expanded. She dragged me to live gigs in dingy venues I never would have found on my own. I got her into my nerdy board game nights. We spent Sundays in bed scrolling through real estate we couldn't afford and making up stories about the people who lived there. A year in, we moved in together. We found a slightly shabby two-bedroom in Marrickville with cracked ceilings and a kitchen that still had the original 90s lino. We bought a couch off Facebook Marketplace that sagged in the middle and argued about whose turn it was to take the bin out. It was normal, comfortably, beautifully normal. We talked about the future in that lazy, one-day way. Maybe buy a place if the market ever stopped being insane. Maybe get a dog when we weren't both working full-time in the city. Maybe travel properly, not the rushed 2-week holidays we'd been squeezing in around work, but something longer. Then she got the job offer in Melbourne. It was a Tuesday night. It's always a Tuesday in these stories, I swear, when she came home buzzing, cheeks flushed, waving an email on her phone in my face. "You're looking at the new community engagement led for Youth Rise," she said, eyes shining. Youth Rise was this not-for-profit she'd had a professional crush on for years. They did early intervention programs for at-risk teens, got funding from big names, had their posters up around the city with glossy photos of smiling kids. "That's huge," I said, standing up from the couch. "Babe, that's amazing." We celebrated with cheap champagne and Thai food. She paced the living room in her socks while we talked it through. The role was in Melbourne. More money, more responsibility, work she actually cared about. It was also 300 kilometers away, in a city where we knew no one. "We could do long distance for a bit," she said, flopping down next to me. 6 months, a year. I come up on weekends sometimes, you come down sometimes. We meet in the middle and complain about Jetstar. My stomach clenched. The idea of her being that far away made something primal in me want to hold on tighter, but the idea of asking her not to take the job felt worse. "We'll make it work," I said, because I genuinely believed we could. It's not forever. We had 3 frenetic months of planning. She sublet a tiny studio in Collingwood. We adjusted the lease on our place so I'd stay. She'd chip in a bit until she settled. We did spreadsheets for budgets and flight costs. Her mum cried when we told her. My mum said, "You're good for each other, you'll be fine." The first month after she moved was rough in the way we expected. Weird schedules, missing each other, lonely weekends. We FaceTimed constantly, morning coffees with her propping the phone against the kettle, late-night calls with me half asleep and her wired from evening events. We sent each other dumb selfies all day, her in front of youth centers, me with my cat, who very quickly decided my lap was her sole domain now that Emily's legs weren't available. It wasn't perfect, but it felt like we were both pulling in the same direction. Then, just a friend entered the chat. His name was Daniel. At first, he was just a name in her stories. "We had induction today," she said on one of those early calls, lying on her new bed with boxes still stacked around her. "There's this guy on my team, Daniel. He's from Brisbane and he's like aggressively friendly. You'd like him, he's a data nerd too." "Cool," I said, genuinely glad she'd found someone she clicked with. "Please tell me he's less obsessed with pie charts than my team." She laughed. "He does everything in Google Data Studio. It's disgusting." We judged him. In the beginning, Daniel was like any other coworker friend. He and Emily grabbed lunch together, shared memes about terrible youth justice policies in the group chat she had with her colleagues. She mentioned him the same way she mentioned her boss or the admin lady who always brought muffins. Then slowly, his name started showing up more. We had drinks after work. Daniel insisted on shouting the first round. Daniel found this amazing band, My Place, near the office. "Daniel and I are doing this school visit tomorrow. I'm kind of nervous." I tried not to be weird about it. People need friends, especially in a new city. And Emily had always been someone who collected people wherever she went. When I mentioned it to my friend Ben over beers, he shrugged. She moved to a new city, man, he said. Would you rather she sit alone in her room every night? He wasn't wrong. But there were moments, tiny things that stuck in my brain. The first time we got cut off mid-call because she said, "Oh, that's Daniel, I'll call you back," and ended our conversation to answer his. The first time I saw her eyes flick just off camera during a FaceTime like she was checking a message while we were talking, then smile in a way that wasn't for me. I asked lightly, "Is that your boyfriend?" She'd roll her eyes and say, "He's just a friend, chill." The first time I saw his actual face was in an Instagram story. Emily had tagged a boomerang of clinking glasses, 3 of them around a table, laughing, her, a girl from work whose name I can't remember, and Daniel leaning in from the side, beard backwards cap, that easy grin some people have. I tapped his profile. It was private, but his bio said youth worker, bad guitarist, friend to all dogs, harmless on paper. What got to me wasn't him, though. It was the increasing portion of her time and attention he occupied compared to mine. We were still calling, but our conversations got shorter. She'd be half distracted, replying to messages, keeping one eye on her work chat. The "I miss you" text slowed down, the explicit "I love you" turned into quick "love ya," thrown in at the end of practical messages about flights and bills. When I brought it up the first time, I tried to be as non-accusatory as possible. "I feel like we haven't properly connected in a bit," I said one night. "Like we talk, but we're always tired or busy. Maybe we could schedule a proper long call. Friday night, no distractions." She sighed, flopping back against her pillow, laptop propped on her knees. "Can we not make my social life a problem?" she asked. "I get that you're lonely, but I can't be your emotional support animal 24/7 when I'm dealing with 15-year-olds who want to punch each other at school." "That's not what I said," I replied, strung. "You implied it," she said. "Sometimes I need to blow off steam with people who are actually here, you know. Daniel and Jess and everyone, they get what my day looks like." "And I do." She groaned. "That's not what I mean. I'm too tired for this. Can we talk about it another time?" Then she hung up, blamming bad Wi-Fi via text 5 minutes later. That was the first time I felt that familiar childhood feeling again. The one from when my dad would promise to come to my soccer games and then not show up. My mum saying he was just busy, while my gut screamed something else. My gut started screaming louder when the shirt showed up. We were a few months into long distance by then. I was supposed to visit the following weekend. We'd booked flights, planned a proper 3 days together. She sent me links to restaurants she wanted to try, a market she thought I'd like. I'd already mentally packed my bag. That night, I'd called her on the way home from my own job, the sky over Sydney doing that bruised pink thing it does in winter. She answered lying on her stomach, chin on her hands, hair spilling over the pillow. We did the usual check-in. Her day had been intense but good. The kids at a school in Footscray had actually engaged with a workshop on consent, which she was buzzing about. My day had been spreadsheets and a fire drill. Then the video lagged, glitched, caught up. And there it was, that navy shirt just behind her, on a chair that had previously only ever held her clothes. I saw the label flash white against dark fabric, the sleeves rolled up in a way that felt intimate, like someone had taken it off in a hurry. "Whose shirt is that?" slipped out before I could stop it. She did the laugh, the flick, the "he's just a friend, Daniel left it here after work drinks" line, the little eye roll at my question. "It's kind of weird he left his shirt at your place," I said, trying to keep my voice casual while my palms started to sweat. "It was like 2 a.m, he was drunk, he spilled beer on it," she said, waving off my concern. "I chucked it in the wash. Relax, you're acting like I'm waving a giant red flag at you." "You kind of are," I said. She frowned. "Max, seriously, he's my friend. You told me to make friends down here. What do you want from me?" "I want you not to be dismissive when I'm uncomfortable," I said. "That's all." "You're uncomfortable with a shirt," she shot back. "Maybe that's something you need to unpack that isn't actually about me." We changed the subject, or rather she did, made a joke about dragging me into an op shop when I visited so we could buy me a Melbourne uniform. I smiled, nodded, tried to breathe normally, but that image, her in bed, his shirt on the chair behind her, sat in my chest like a stone. Here's the thing about being cheated on, or suspecting you are. It's not just the big, obvious things that get you. It's the way every tiny, previously neutral detail becomes loaded. A late reply becomes suspicious. A laugh you're not part of becomes threatening. A navy shirt becomes a whole story you can't see but can't stop writing in your head. I didn't want to be that guy, the paranoid, controlling boyfriend who polices his girlfriend's friendships. My dad had been that guy. I grew up watching him accuse my mum of affairs because she laughed too hard at a joke from a male waiter. I always swore I'd never do that. So I wrestled with it. I spent an embarrassing amount of time talking myself down. It's just a shirt. She says he's a friend. She's always had guy friends. You agreed to this long distance. Don't make her life smaller because you're scared. At the same time, there was this low-level static in my head that wouldn't shut up. A few days after Shirtgate, I opened Instagram and saw a mutual colleague had posted a group photo from some Youth Rise fundraiser. There was Emily, looking gorgeous in a dress I hadn't seen before, arms slung around Jess. And behind them, slightly out of focus but clearly there, Emily and Daniel leaning close, his hand on the small of her back. Maybe they were just posing. Maybe he was just steadying her. But I remembered how she used to hate anyone touching that spot without asking. I zoomed in like an absolute psycho, sitting at my desk in my empty apartment, pixelating the image until it blurred into nothing. Then I threw my phone onto the couch like it had burned me. I told Ben again. Do you think she's cheating? I asked, the question out in the air finally. Ben chewed on a chip, thinking. I think it's possible she's emotionally checked out, he said carefully. Doesn't necessarily mean she's physically cheated, but if you're feeling like this all the time, something's off. So what do I do? Just ask, I said. She already thinks I'm jealous because of the shirt thing. He shrugged. You don't have to accuse. Just say you're uncomfortable with the dynamic and you need reassurance. If she cares, she'll give it. Or she'll get defensive, which tells you something too. Spoiler, she got defensive. We had the showdown conversation 2 nights before I was meant to fly down. I'd been trying to keep things light, talking about the market we were going to, the movie we'd booked. But it felt like we were playing at being us, lines and beats we used to hit naturally now slightly off pace. At some point, the Daniel topic surfaced again, something small like her saying, "Oh, I can't FaceTime Friday until later, I'm covering Daniel's shift at the drop-in." It poked that sore spot. Do you spend time with anyone else there? I asked, regretting it as soon as it came out. She sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose. Here we go. What? You and your Daniel obsession, she said. I swear, you say his name more than I do at this point. I'm not obsessed, I said. I'm trying to understand how much of your life you're sharing with him versus me. You're being ridiculous, she said. He's my colleague, friend, full stop. Friends don't usually leave their shirts at other friends' houses, I said. It's a shirt, she snapped. Are we seriously still on that? You're sounding, I don't know, possessive. It's not a good look on you. The word possessive hit me like a slap, because I'd spent so long not wanting to be that. I'm allowed to feel weird, Em, I said quietly. From here, it looks like you've built this whole new world and I'm dialing in from the outside. I miss you. I miss knowing what your day feels like without having to schedule a call around other people. And it's hard not to notice that the one name that comes up most in your stories now isn't mine. Her face softened for half a second, then hardened again. Do you want me to stop saying his name? She asked. Would that fix it? I want you to be honest, I said. If there's something going on there, if lines are getting blurry, I'd rather hear it from you than fill in the blanks on my own. She stared at me, chewing the inside of her cheek. A tell I knew meant she was thinking hard. Then she shook her head. No lines are blurry, she said. We're just close. It has to be that way for the work we do. You're reading something into it because you're insecure about the distance. That's on you, Max. It was like standing on a floor that someone had been quietly sawing through, and being told I was imagining the wobble. I let it go, or I told myself I did. I went back to my spreadsheets, my cat, my half-emptied wardrobe. I'd been slowly moving stuff into a suitcase for the trip. The static got louder. Then the night before my flight, she called. Her video was off. Hey, she said, you got a minute? My stomach dropped, yeah. She took a breath. I think, maybe you shouldn't come this weekend. There it was, the sentence I'd been dreading without admitting it. Why? I asked. I'm just exhausted, she said. Work, been insane. I've got this report due Monday. My brain is mush. I don't want our time together to feel like another obligation. Can we reschedule when things calm down a bit? We've had this booked for weeks, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I've already taken the time off. I was literally half packed. I know, and I'm sorry, she said quickly. I should have said something sooner. I just kept hoping I'd magically have more energy. I just can't do a whole emotional weekend right now. Spending time with me is a whole emotional weekend, I said, strung. She groaned. You know what I mean. We'll end up talking about us and Daniel and the shirt, and I can't. Not now. Are you alone? I asked, the question out before I could stop it. Silence. Then what? Are you alone in your apartment right now? Yes, she said after a beat too long. Why would you even ask that? The static in my head turned into a roar. I wish I could say I made the wise choice then, that I said, okay, cool, let's take space, and calmly cancelled my flight. Instead, something snapped. Okay, I said brightly, the kind of too bright that made my own teeth hurt. We can reschedule, no worries. Really, she said, sounding surprised. Yeah, I said, totally, talk soon. Then I hung up, grabbed my phone, and changed my flight to the early one. It wasn't my proudest decision-making moment. It was pure emotion, driven by this mix of panic and anger, and the sick need to see with my own eyes whether I was crazy. The next morning, I was on a 6 a.m. flight to Melbourne with a backpack and a knot in my stomach. I didn't tell her. I told myself I was just going to surprise her in a romantic gesture, that if I got there and everything was perfectly normal, I'd apologize for doubting her and we'd laugh about my dramatic move. The whole flight, my brain ping-ponged between worst-case scenarios and best-case fantasies. I pictured her opening the door in pajamas, eyes wide, saying, "Oh my God, you idiot, what are you doing here?" I also pictured opening the door with a spare key she'd given me and finding someone else's shoes by the mat. When the plane landed, my hands were so sweaty I could barely grip my bag. I got a rideshare to her street, heart thudding. Melbourne that morning was cold and grey, the kind of cold that gets into your bones. I walked up the narrow stairs to her building, fingers trembling around the key. Her door was locked from the inside. That stupidly reassured me for a second. I knocked. Silence. I knocked again harder. It's me. I heard movement then. The scrape of a chair, the soft thud of footsteps. The lock clicked, chain slid. The door opened a crack. Emily stood there in an oversized hoodie and leggings, hair in a messy bun, no makeup. She looked tired and shocked. "Max," she said, voice somewhere between disbelief and anger. "Surprise," I said, lifting the bag like a peace offering. "I know you said not to come, but I thought maybe." "What are you doing here?" she hissed, glancing over her shoulder. The way she did it, like someone might see us, was the final confirmation my gut needed. "I wanted to see you," I said, suddenly feeling incredibly foolish. "I thought we could talk." She opened the door wider, stepping aside with a tight jaw. "You can't just show up unannounced like this," she said as I stepped in. It's not okay, Max." Her studio looked the same as it did on video, but lived in. Dishes in the sink, blankets on the couch, a half-finished mug of tea on the table. On the back of her chair, hanging like some horrible recurring character, was that same navy shirt. Only this time it wasn't alone. Underneath it, neatly folded, were a pair of men's jeans and a grey hoodie. It felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. "Who else is here?" I asked, my voice low. "No one," she said too quickly. I looked at the clothes, at her bare feet, at the rumpled duvet on the bed. My chest hurt. "Emily," I said, please don't lie right now." She followed my gaze, saw the clothes, and for a heartbeat her face crumpled, not in sadness but in a kind of caught way. Then she straightened. "He stayed over," she said, arms wrapping around herself. "On the couch." "He," I repeated. "Daniel." She nodded, eyes shiny. "He was drunk, it was late, I didn't want him driving." My laugh came out sharp and ugly. "He must be really committed to safety, leaving his entire wardrobe here," I said. "Don't be an asshole," she snapped. "We're both adults, we can share a space without it being." "Did you sleep with him?" I asked. She paused. It was the longest second of my life. "No," she said eventually. It wasn't convincing, not because of how she said it, but because I could feel the lie like a third person in the room. "I saw your messages," I said quietly. It wasn't true, I hadn't, but her eyes widened in pure panic in a way that told me I might as well have. "You went through my phone," she said, scandalized. "I didn't," I said, "but the way you reacted just now says enough." She opened her mouth, closed it, paced away from me towards the window. "This is insane," she muttered. "You just turn up, you accuse me of cheating, you're being insane, Max." "If I'm insane, it's because every time I've brought up something that feels off, you've told me I'm overreacting," I said. "The shirt, the texts, you cancelling my trip last minute. You keep saying he's just a friend, while his shirt is hanging in your room and his clothes are on your chair." She spun around, tears now spilling over. "Fine," she said. "You want the truth. We kissed once after drinks, that's it." "That's it," I repeated. "Just once." "Yes," she said. "I felt horrible. We talked about it, we agreed it was a mistake. We're being professional now. I didn't tell you because I knew you." Show up unannounced and ask if your friend is in your bed, I cut in. She flinched. You're twisting this, she said. You haven't been here, Max, you don't know what it's like. Then tell me, I said, voice shaking. What is it like? She sank onto the edge of the bed, the hoodie riding up to show a strip of skin I used to kiss absent-mindedly. Seeing it made my chest ache. It's lonely, she said, staring at her hands. This job is a lot. The kids' stories, the bureaucracy, the constant feeling that you're putting band-aids on bullet wounds. I come home exhausted and I can't even explain half of it to you because you're hundreds of kilometers away, and when we talk you're tired too, or you're in the middle of something, or the connection is shit. Daniel's there, in the office, in the schools, he gets it. We vent, we debrief, we have a drink. One night we had too many. It got blurry, we kissed, I pulled away. I told him it couldn't happen again. And it did. She hesitated, and that hesitation was its own answer. Emily, I said. It's not like that, she said quickly. We're not dating. I love you, I'm with you, it's just he's there, you're not, and sometimes I need someone who's just a friend, I finished. That's not fair, she said weakly. What's not fair is making me feel crazy for months, I said, anger finally cutting through the fog. You made me doubt my own instincts. Every time I said something felt off, you called me jealous or possessive, all while this was happening. She started crying harder, shoulders shaking. I'm sorry, she sobbed. I didn't know how to tell you without losing you. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I kept thinking I'd figure it out and then it would be something I could explain better. Figure what out? I asked, whether you wanted him or me. Silent. I've replayed that pause so many times. The answer she didn't say out loud sat between us. I don't want to lose you, she said eventually. You're your home, you're my person. People don't usually cheat on their person, I said. People make mistakes, she said desperately. We can work through this. We can, I'll set boundaries, I'll change teams, I'll do whatever. Please don't walk out on us because of a few stupid choices. A few stupid choices, that phrase lodged in my throat. I wish I could say, I stormed out then, that I had this clear, cinematic sense of self-respect and just left. I didn't. I sat down on the chair under his shirt and cried. She cried. We went in circles for hours. In the end, I didn't stay the weekend. I grabbed my bag, left my spare toothbrush in her bathroom like an accusation, and checked into a cheap hotel near the station. We agreed, through exhaustion more than any real resolution, that we'd take some time and talk again when we're calmer. Back in Sydney, my apartment felt different. The couch we'd picked together was just a couch. The mugs she'd bought from a market were just ceramic. I walked around touching things like they belonged to someone else. We did talk again, several times. She apologized, sometimes sincerely, sometimes defensively. She reiterated that she loved me most, which is honestly not as comforting as people think. She insisted it had only been a few times, that it was a full-blown affair. She said she'd tell Daniel they couldn't be friends anymore if that's what I needed. Part of me wanted desperately to believe her, to chalk it up to stress and distance and pretend we could hit some emotional reset button. Another part of me, a quieter, stubborn part, kept whispering she lied to you for months, not just by omission but actively. She let you question your sanity rather than own what she'd done. We tried couples counseling over video for a bit, which was its own special kind of surreal. 3 faces in little squares on a screen, talking about trust and betrayal like we were in a TED talk. The therapist asked good questions. What did trust look like to each of us? What did forgiveness mean? Was I willing to stay if she cut all contact with Daniel and committed to radical transparency? Was she willing to sit with my slow, messy grief without demanding I get over it on her timeline? I realized over those sessions that the answer to both was probably no. I didn't trust that she actually wanted to give him up. She didn't seem to truly grasp the depth of what she'd done. It was like she thought if she cried enough and said, I'm sorry, in enough different ways, the reset would happen. The last time we spoke properly, months after the navy shirt first appeared, was over yet another video call. We were both exhausted. The therapist had suggested we try a week of no contact to see what clarity emerges. It had backfired. The clarity that emerged was that I felt weirdly calmer without constantly negotiating my reality. I feel like you're different, she said at one point. Colder. There it was again, that word, cold. I think I've just stopped fighting myself, I replied. So that's it, she asked. 4 years and we just quit. I'm not quitting, I said. I'm choosing not to stay in a relationship where my instincts get treated like character flaws. She rolled her eyes through the tears. You always did love a dramatic line. I smiled sadly. You always did love a just a friend, I said. We broke up, not with a bang, but with a series of small surrenders. We sorted the lease. I kept the flat, she stayed in Melbourne. We split the furniture by whoever had more emotional attachment to what. She Venmo'd me for her share of the bond on the stuff that had been in my name. We haven't spoken in 6 months. I know pieces of her life through mutuals. She's still at Youth Rise, apparently doing well, likely still friends or more with Daniel. I don't check her socials. I muted her stories the day we ended things, and weirdly, that might have been the most loving thing I've done for myself in years. Sometimes I think about that video call, the first one with the shirt, how different things might have been if she'd said, "Okay, there's something I need to tell you," instead of, "He's just a friend." Would it have hurt more or less then? Is short, sharp pain better than watching the slow leak you feel powerless to stop? I don't know. What I do know is this: your body often knows before your brain lets itself know. My heart understood the navy shirt long before my mouth could form the words, "I think she's cheating." Every time she told me I was paranoid, jealous, possessive, I overruled that internal siren in the name of being a good partner. If you're reading this because you've got your own version of the navy shirt hanging behind your partner in a video call, I'm not going to tell you they're definitely cheating or you need to leave. Every situation is different. People screw up and sometimes truly do the work to repair it. But I will say this: pay attention to how they respond when you bring your discomfort to them. Do they get curious or do they get defensive? Do they offer reassurance or do they tell you your feelings are the problem? Do they say, "He's just a friend," while his clothes hang in your space, or do they say, "Okay, I see why that looks bad. Here's what's actually going on, and here's what I'm going to do to make this feel safer for you"? Those responses tell you as much, if not more, than whatever they did in the first place. Now, months later, I'm okay. Not magically healed, not dating someone new with trust issues magically gone. Just okay. I work, I see friends. I water the plant she bought that I stubbornly refuse to let die out of some weird principle. I'm learning to listen to that low-level static before it becomes a roar. I still think about Emily. I probably always will. 4 years is a lot of life to share with someone to just file under X. Sometimes it's a stupid memory, her dancing in the kitchen with a tea towel as a cape, or the way she used to narrate our cat's imaginary in a monologue. Sometimes it's darker, a flash of that panic in her eyes at the door in Melbourne, or the way she said, "You're being insane," like a script she'd rehearsed. The difference now is I don't use those memories to beat myself up. I don't replay them as evidence that I should have seen everything sooner or stayed longer. I just let them be what they are, scenes from a story that ended where it needed to, even if the way we got there was messy and not at all how I'd pictured it. And yeah, if I'm honest, part of me still bristles when I hear someone say, "He's just a friend." I know that phrase can be perfectly innocent, but I also know how easily it can become a shield, a way of keeping one person close while pretending to the other that there's nothing to see. If you're on the other side of this, if you're the one saying "just a friend" to a partner whose eyes are starting to look like mine did in that video call, I'll say one thing: don't make them question their sanity just so you don't have to sit with your own guilt. If lines are blurring, own it. Either pull back or be honest. Don't leave them staring at a shirt on a chair, wondering if they're losing their mind. Because the day might come when they finally listen to that quiet voice inside them, and when they do, it's not coldness that'll walk out the door. It's the version of them that trusted you enough to believe "just a friend" meant what it said.